cheer. To climates unknown did courageously steer. Through oceans to deserts for freedom they came, and dying bequeathed us their freedom and fame. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady. Not as slaves, but as free men alive.
Anyway, thank you all for coming. Welcome to the kickoff of our fall semester of the Conversations for the Historical Society of Old Abington. I greet everyone here and everyone watching us on cable. We are on local cable and we're also on YouTube, so anyone can find our programs, which is kind of fun. And anyway, we'll start this program as we start all of them, if we might, with the salute to the flag. So all who care to or are able to, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming again. Please take a seat, relax. And we have an exciting program today. I want to talk about a little Historical Society business first, about what we do and how we're doing it. We have 6 conversations every season. We have what we call the fall semester, which covers the first Sunday in October, November, and December. And then we take a couple of months off due to likely inclement weather and do a spring semester that takes us into March, April, and May. So we have laid out our conversations for the fall, and we're working on the ones for the spring. I think we know what they're going to be. We're just kind of working out some details. But we're here today, as you probably are aware, to talk about the Boston Post-Cane, and we have a guest speaker about that. Next month, we have the honor of welcoming and introducing Stephen O'Neill, who's the new director here at the Dyer Memorial Library. So, and I don't think the trustees have yet done anything to publicly welcome him, but we will. So, anyway, so he'll be, I've met him, he's charming, he's also executive director of the Hanover Historical Society. So perhaps 2 part-time jobs make a whole, I don't know, but has mad qualifications. He's very interested in getting us as open to the public as possible and is pursuing grants and possible internships, and he has some exciting ideas that I think we very much all want to be a part of. I've noticed that the parking lot on days that we're open, and we're open more days now, is full. So, I mean, people are coming back, and it's really delightful to see that. So we'll be meeting with him then and talking about his ideas, his past, and what he hopes to do here in the future. The beginning of December, we're going to wrap up our Rockland anniversary year by going to, we'd like to do a church in December. We're going to the Episcopal Church in Rockland on Goddard Street. Yeah. How many know where that is? Okay, a good number of you. It's on the same road you would take from Union Street to get down to the high school. It's on the right-hand side. For me as an architect, it has an amazing story. It was built as a very contemporary church. And then at one point, the congregation decided to wrap the whole thing in a very traditional New England church shell. So they built a church around the church. And there was an article back about when it was about to happen by Robert Campbell, the architectural critic for the Globe, who talked about it with some amazement, but there was never a follow-up in terms of, well, what happened next? So we certainly are going to be talking about the what happened next, but also how they got to be there. I got actually a note from their historian the other day, I think, no, it was from the minister, who said that the pipe organ was interesting too, and her, I don't know, father was an architect, and the pipe organ was made up from 3 pipes. I know, I played it, but that will be a fun part of the tour as well. The inside is still very contemporary, the outside is not. So that will wrap up our through the end of the year. Next year is the anniversary year for Whitman. They seceded from Abington 1 year after Rockland did and established as South Abington. We're not going to jump in on in March. Their kickoff is like the first weekend in April. So we're actually, again, looking at a two-part series to talk about Whitman, the breakaway, and then the founding of the new town. Exactly what we did earlier this year for Rockland. But they won't be ready until April to do that, and but we're in discussions already. And we're actually talking about being part of their kickoff weekend and perhaps doing our meeting at Whitman Town Hall, and to maybe get certainly more of the town involved and be an official part of the whole ceremony. So that will be our April and May programs, because they kick off in April. Which brings us to March. What we've done, shifting things up a little bit, we're going to do the essay contest again this year. We were successful, the committee was successful in restarting it this year, and they started late last year and carried us through into this year, and awarded 2 prizes, and we did a presentation on that, and they're back at it again. There's a twist to it this year, and I want to bring it up to the assembled membership here today, and basically get an up and down vote on it. The people who created the essay contest are gone. They can't give us their input, they can't share their thoughts about any changes we want to make to it, any things that we might need to change to it over the years. So it's kind of up to us to figure it out. One thing different that happened in this past round was they added video as a possibility to it. And I took a breath and said, well, you know, video wasn't available back when the essay contest was started. And what is a video presentation other than an essay with pictures and motions? Fine, okay. This year, raising the bar a little differently, and I understand why, and I'm okay with that. They're talking about artwork. And I said, okay, maybe a little removed from essay, but if it gets more involvement and thinking more, the other thing we did last year was they created a separate category for students, which I thought was brilliant. So I have their current form here that will be sent out, and I'm just going to quickly read it through, and this is what we're putting out to the public. And let me say first, the committee is 3 members. 2 of them are former teachers. We have Marilyn Zagarella-Weber, who's with us. We have Eileen Creighton-Walls as well. Deb Damon, who is formerly with HR with Cumberland Farms, retired, is not here today, but she's the 3rd of the trio. They're a brilliant woman. They're really good at what they do. And anyway, so this is what they've come up with. The Historical Society of Old Abington, Rockland, Whitman, is holding its annual historic essay/video/art contest. The contest is open to all, including high school students. The high school submissions will be judged separately from the adult submission, thereby resulting in 2 separate contest winners. Contestants may submit a historic essay, a personal remembrance, an original video, or a work of art. All submissions will be judged on historic accuracy, adherence to the topic, organization, interest, originality, and where appropriate, spelling, grammar, punctuation, and neatness. The entry may be accompanied by illustrations, maps, photos, and/or charts if desired. Historical essay topics may include a significant person, event, or place that relates to Old Abington's history from the 1600s to present day. Personal remembrance. The writer may create a remembrance of something significant in their life as it relates to living in Old Abington. Authors may write about a personal experience which will become part of the town history. The entry should have accurate historic facts and details based upon research by the author as they relate to one's personal story. Videos. The subject matter must relate in some way to life in Old Abington. Visual art. Judging will be based upon originality, perspective, quality, and connection to Old Abington. And here are the requirements. Only 1 entry per person. If it's written, it must be typed. Videos should be submitted as a YouTube video. References must be cited and bibliography included when appropriate. Artificial intelligence may not be used in the creation of entries. sign of our times. All submissions must include a cover letter with the creator's name, working title, an email address, and phone number. Creator's name should not be on the original work. The cover letter must be submitted with one's work. Entries must be made, sent postmarked by January 31st, 2025, and may be mailed to us, emailed to us. The writer may consider visiting the Diary Memorial Library as well as other local libraries, historic societies, historic commissions, or repositories for research. All sources must be appropriately cited. The first place winner will be awarded a $200 and a year's 25-26 free membership in the HSOA. The winner will also present their work at a meeting of the HSOA. Several people may work together to submit an entry. However, the award in this case will be split among the authors. Entries will be judged by members of the HSOA. For all entries, the HSOA will have free and unrestricted republishing rights for non-commercial use. All future uses of entries will be cited. Questions should be mailed too. Anyway, that's the entirety of this. In general, I like it. I got a little nervous when we said art, but thinking, okay, it's another form of expression, and some people are better at that than they are at writing. So perhaps if there's any brief questions or discussions, we'll entertain that. Ultimately, I'm looking for the membership to give a yay-nay vote on this. If it's a nay, we send it back to them for retooling. If it's a yay, we launch tomorrow. Actually, we launch today. So anyway, first of all, can members identify themselves by raising their hand? Okay, thank you. That's a good number. So, and it's only members I'm going to be asking to vote yay or nay on this. That's only fair. Anyway, are there any thoughts to be shared, any discussions, any concerns? You've heard exactly what they've putting out there, and I think it's well drafted. I just want to make sure we're all comfortable with the direction it's taking. Any thoughts to be shared? If not, that's okay. I just want to give the opportunity.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are 3 categories: written, video, and art.
Yes.
Okay.
But now, written, there's like historic essay and also personal remembrances.
Okay.
So that's like a subset of the written.
Gotcha.
But yes, you are correct.
I've just,
And just also, let me say this about it. This year, our 2 winners, there was an essay, there was a personal remembrance. Personal remembrance was something kind of new for us. It was freaking brilliant. I mean, to have Dot Taylor talk about going to an elementary school in Rockland that no longer exists, when there are outhouses in the backyard, no indoor plumbing, pens, ink pens at the desk that when you got to a certain age you could use, being walked up to another school to see the dental hygienist. I mean, I can't even relate to a lot of what she said, and without her saying it, that history would have been lost to us. I am frankly turning to my class reunion group. We've had a 50th reunion recently, and we just had a 70th birthday party for ourselves here, which was a blast. But turning to them saying, hey, you guys went to Center School and North School and to the West Wing. Those aren't available anymore. They're gone. We went to a high school starting in 1968 that is torn down. And it was only 4 years old when we attended it. It's gone. We have memories that no one else has, and no one else ever will have. How about us coming in? How about some of you coming in with this? No research. This is coming out from your own personal memories. So, I mean, I'm really encouraging this. Even if you don't win, you're adding to the historic knowledge of the town in ways that are just phenomenal. And adding personal memories, you know, kudos to the committee. That was brilliant. And I'm loving what's coming out of it. The other aspect of this are the prizes, $200, you know, potentially we're giving away $400. I did some checking on the account, and because the account doesn't grow, that's the other aspect of it, and I don't see what I did with the paper. But anyway, eventually it could run out. But what has happened over the years And this, to my knowledge, started with the late Doc Whiting. He would submit every year, he'd often win, he would never collect the money. He would just take the prize. Being encouraged along that line, I did exactly the same. I did win this year for something that I wrote about, the Timberland Abington shoe, which had nothing to do with Abington. And Dot Taylor won for her remembrances. I don't expect everyone else is going to do that. Someone's going to want the money, and I don't blame them. It's what it's there for. But potentially, if other people don't take the prize money, it continues on. So that's something that could happen as well. We just don't know. But I wanted to let you all in on that. This is what's happening behind the scenes. So I'm not hearing a lot of other questions. Yes, Bill.
I think you should make an option for people to contribute.
Good idea. Yes. As part of the entry form, or just in general as part of HSOA.
When they're here looking to have a bowl out.
Okay. Well, the Dyer does that already, but
Well,
okay. But I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I don't think it has to be part of the entry, but yes, it'd be nice to be able to add to, replenish, and keep it going that way. This is all in memory of the late historian Martha Campbell, and the fund was started by Colin Campbell, her widower. So it's very significant to Abington. So, okay, I think I'm ready for a thumbs up, thumbs down vote for all of this. Membership in favor of the entry as I have written it out, as I've read it out to you now. All in favor of it as written. Seeing a lot of hands. Okay. Thank you. And anyone opposed to it as written? I'd say it's unanimous. Well done, committee. Thank you. So we will be releasing this as soon as tomorrow. I actually asked them to take a breath. They wanted to do it last Monday. And I said, just give me one more week. I just want to be on more solid ground here because it's different enough from what was originally proposed. So I think we should do it. And we did it. And thank you all. I greatly appreciate your participation in this process. And I hope you all maybe now feel more a part of it, because you are. Yes?
What about an elementary, like sixth graders, if some of them are brilliant, can they enter? You said high school.
We've only done high school.
Okay.
I just
In case some of them.
It would be another whole category, be another whole prize. Because I can't compare that against anything. That's why we kept the high school one separately.
Okay.
Originally, the high school was $100, and they're kind of saying, why is it worth less? Okay. So anyway, it's only money. So today, okay, on to today's topic. We are going to be talking about the Boston Post cane. How many have heard about the Boston Post cane before? You're all a bunch of good historians. A lot of you know. Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Kevin Donovan to come forward and join me. And I'm going to put him on the spot a little bit and ask us to, I can introduce him, but he has a lot of credentials I don't even know about. But thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Good. Thank you.
And most presently, Kevin is the chairman of the Abington Board of Selectmen. And he has been on the Abington Board of Selectmen in the past. He's an Abington native. I think his sister lives around the corner from me. Yes.
Yep.
And you graduated, was it VOTAC?
Correct.
Okay. And what else? You've held a lot of positions
I
in
have,
town management and even at South Weymouth Naval Air Station,
Correct,
as I
yeah.
recall. So just give us some highlights, if you would, to
Sure.
blow your horn a little bit.
Just by way of introduction, I'm a lifelong resident of Abington. My wife Donna and I, both are lifelong residents of Abington. This is my I'm going in my 5th term as a member of the Board of Selectmen. I was first elected, believe it or not, in 1994. I've served, just to give you a brief sketch, I was town moderator in Abington. I've been a selectman, as I indicated. I was town administrator in Rockland, town administrator in Kingston. I was Plymouth County Commissioner for 6 years back in 80, now I gotta stop and think, 85 to 91. From there, I was executive director of the Holbrook Housing Authority, the Stoughton Housing Authority, and then subsequently, as I mentioned, Rockland, Kingston, and then I ended up over at the former Naval Air Station at South Weymouth when the government disbanded the Naval Air Station, and the legislature passed a law to create a separate municipal entity. I was hired as the chief executive officer, and my duty was to form a government. And my duty was, I had a vacant military installation with vacant buildings, runways, nothing.
Did you get a hat and epaulets or something to
It
go
was-
with this? I mean,
So what happened was, through the course of time, we were able to negotiate with the state, the governor's office, as well as the Pentagon, and we provided money to do a east-west parkway to transverse the base. And as of today, there's about 2,500 people living there. It's still a work in progress, clearly, but that's sort of a basis of a little bit about my background. In fact, I was just reminiscing, the last time I spoke to the Historical Society, I believe was like 1988 or so, when Ruth Howe, the late Ruth Howe, had asked me to come in because as county commissioner, I had appointed Martha Campbell, our good friend Martha, as the county historian. And she actually, the county commissioners had in their custody the actual Pilgrim records, the Pilgrim colony records. So, and they were in our vault. And nobody saw them, and if you wanted to see them, we had to stand over you, because people used to take the book and they ripped out the deed that Miles Standish had for his house and walked away with it. So I ended up, Martha translated, and if you can imagine, the books back then were in Elizabethan English. So Martha transcribed from Elizabethan English to English that we could all understand. So she did that complete project for us, and it was a result of that Ruth had asked me to come and speak to the Historical Society on that. So that's a little bit of a history and forte into
absolutely. Martha seldom did like radio and television because she was a Southern lady.
That's right. Yeah.
And she told me once, we were founding members of the Historic Commission here in town together. I was in college, all the others are dead now. But she said, no Yankee wants to be told their history by a Southerner. And she was probably right, but she could write about it. And she had her regular column in the Rockland newspaper,
right,
Rockland Standard.
Yeah.
Which was safe. She didn't have to say anything out loud. But charming woman, absolutely charming,
And
brilliant.
And the amazing thing, her house, if you looked at her house, it was contemporary.
The chicken coop.
Exactly.
Chicken coop.
And you'd never realize that Martha lived in the house. Interesting to note, she was getting along and was sick, and she had me come up the house one day, and she said, you can take any of my books that you want, any of my historical books. She said, what you don't want, I'm going to give to the Dyer. So I was able to take.
You mean you can stuff we
I
wanted?
got,
Great,
exactly.
Thank you.
So I was able to take.
I hope you're leaving it to us someday.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that was, Martha and I had a great relationship.
Martha's office was in the kitchen pantry.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no food in the kitchen pantry. It was Martha's office.
That's right, yeah.
Every shelf was full of notebooks and books and pre-computer. Everything was done by hand, and it was just brilliant. But I mean, we were friends, and thinking of myself as a historian, I look at Martha and say, yeah, no,
Yeah.
whatever. But okay, so this is something interesting, and you revived this. But would you tell us first of all a bit about the Boston Post-Cane, how it came into being? I know you know the history of that. And then elaborate to how we became re-aware of it in Abington.
Sure. Actually, it was actually the brainchild of Edward Atkins Grozier, who was publisher of the Boston Post newspaper. So I guess the question becomes is, who was Edward Grozier? And maybe if we could take a few minutes to just tell you about that. He was actually born in 1859. His father was a sea captain, and his father was born in Provincetown, his mother in next to Lewiston, Maine. There's a little town up in Lewiston, Maine. And he was actually born on the ship as it was coming into San Francisco in sight of the Golden Gate Bridge. So with that, he later attended Provincetown High School, then Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, and graduated from Boston University with a degree in philosophy, I believe. He married in 1885, and his wife and him had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy succeeded him as publisher of the Boston Post. But prior to that, he began his career in journalism, actually. He was a reporter for the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald at the same time. He
Double dipping.
He actually took a leave of absence and for 1 year was the private secretary to Governor George Robinson in 1883 and 1884, and then he returned to journalism. He went on to become city editor of the New York World and managing editor of the Evening Works and Sunday World. In October of 1881, he purchased the rights, the majority rights of the old Boston Post. Now, the Boston Post at that point in time was on the verge of bankruptcy. And it was a newspaper that it had a morning publication, but it was very, very sparse. And he felt as though he needed to, enhance the readership. So he had an idea to bring it forward. But before I get into that and talk about the Boston Post King, he actually, he revived the Post for 25 years, and there was two notable journalism awards that his paper won. One was there was a murder in Boston that the woman was Avis Linnell, and the murder happened in 1911, and nobody, including the authorities, had any idea it was a murder. He felt as though that it was. He assigned his reporter as investigative journalist to go out and investigate it. It turned out they turned up the evidence that the perpetrator was a Charles Richardson, and they tracked it down that he actually bought cyanide from a druggist in Newton, Massachusetts, and had poisoned the woman. Because of all the newspaper publicity on it, Richardson came in, confessed, was found guilty, and ended up, in those days, being executed for the murder. So he brought to justice something that the police and the authorities, the district attorney at the time, had poo-pooed. The second one was more prevalent, was Charles Ponzi. Remember Charles Ponzi and the Ponzi scheme? His newspaper was active in trying to expose Ponzi, and nobody at the time would believe him because a lot of government figures, a lot of prominent people had invested in Ponzi's scheme. And it wasn't until it finally burst that they realized what he was saying all along was correct.
Yeah.
And the paper ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize as a result of that. So that's just sort of the history of Edward Groza. So the question now comes is, okay, how did the Boston Post King come to being? Well, Groza, as I have mentioned to you, took over the newspaper when it was failing. Mm-hmm. And he felt as though he needed a public relations gimmick, if you will, to try and draw readership in. So he commissioned 700 ivory ebony canes. This is a replica of it. And
I borrowed this.
And
I didn't earn it.
and he had at the top of the cane inscribed,
Not this one, but yes.
not that particular one. The top of the cane was inscribed, presented by the Boston Post to the oldest resident of, in our particular case, Abington. And then he had the 700 canes sent to the 700 communities in New England that the Boston Post had a readership in. And he named the Board of Selectmen as the trustees of the cane. And it was the Board of Selectmen's duty that it was to be awarded to the oldest male resident in 1909. Women won the right to vote, as we all know, in 1920. It wasn't until 1930 that the Boston Post said, okay, we're going to relent and allow women to receive the Boston Post cane. So So that's what happened.
And women generally outlive men?
And that's what has happened in this case too, and I'm gonna go through the list for you. So, interesting enough, Abington, as a lot of you may remember, the original town hall, well, not the original, but the town hall that we were all accustomed to was in the old North Abington Congregational Church.
The North Congregational Church at 33 Randolph Street.
Correct.
Now known as Meeting House Corner Apartments. Blame me.
And the cane was found in a closet at the town hall. So it was turned over to the town clerk, and nobody really did anything with it. Fast forward, the town in 1998 built the new town hall, what is now the town hall. And with that, the cane moved to the new town hall and was in the custody of the town clerk in the vault in the corner that nobody paid attention to. So in 2001, I was appointed the town administrator in Kingston. And Kingston had just revived the idea of the Boston Post cane, and it wasn't until then that I really understood the history of it. So I said, well, geez, this is very interesting. I wonder if we have it in Abington, which at the time I was a member of the Board of Selectmen. So I said, I'm going to check into that, which I did, and we found out that we did in fact have the original cane. So I ended up in Kingston. We had just built a new town hall, and I had a case made to put the original Kingston Boston Post cane in so it could be displayed in Kingston Town Hall.
Does it look anything like this?
Exactly. And then I had replica canes bought for both Kingston and Abington. And the idea was that we would award to the oldest resident of the town with a fitting ceremony, depending on the recipient's desire. Some I have gone to their house and awarded, others we've had a nice little party. We've had them at the nursing home where they were residents, and we've had the residents in. But we awarded it on that basis. Now, unfortunately, I revived that in 2002. I got sick of tired of serving as selectman, and you can see how that started. So I left. I decided I'm not going to be a selectman anymore. Well, in 2002, we awarded the cane to
The list.
first one was actually Esther Morrison at
Yep.
105. In 2004, 2 years later, Dorothy Barrett, she was 104. Now, the interesting thing with Dorothy, she actually had tea with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, wow.
So that was, and she had her faculty. And it was very interesting to listen to her speak about that. After that, that was in 2004. 2005 was Myrtle Driscoll, and she was at 103. Then I left the Board of Selectmen, and nothing happened. The cane went dormant. The selectmen didn't pick up on that. In 2011, I decided I was bored and wanted something to do, so I ran for selectman again and got elected.
Well, there's a
And-
motivation.
So,
I was bored. I think I'll be selectman.
and once again, we took up the mantle of the Boston Post cane, and in 2011 awarded it to Evangeline Lee when she turned 100 years old. Fast forward, I left the Board of Selectmen in 2014, and the cane went dormant yet again. And this last time, somebody asked why was I interested in running for selectman, and I said, well, I'm sick and tired of looking, because by now I'm retired. I'm sick and tired of looking out the window. I have nothing to do and I'm bored, and that's the truth.
Here we go again.
So I said, I said I have no agenda other than I want to do what's right. So I got elected, and unfortunately. So
Not only you got elected, you chair.
yeah.
You must be really bored.
So then in 2024, I said, we're going to take the cane from the town clerk's office. I was a graduate of South Vocational High School, so I asked the carpentry department if they would build us a nice case, which they did, and I think Doug had it up there.
I did, yeah.
And so now that's on permanent display outside the town clerk's office in a locked cabinet, similar to what we had in Kingston, so that the people can actually see it. We have a nice plaque that who were the recipients of the cane as we go forward. This recently, I awarded it in January to Emilian Skinny Pastuza.
There's the picture.
Yeah, we went to his house, and Skinny was at the tender age of 103. And he unfortunately, that was in January. He passed away in April, I think it was.
That sounds right.
And so then we needed to award it to the next oldest resident, who was our good friend and
Oh,
Relative.
relative, Louise McKenzie.
yeah.
Now, Louise, you can tell the story.
Yeah.
She makes her own clothes, but I'll let you know.
Anyway, yes, I had prepared some background information. A little bit of family stuff going on here. Louise McKenzie is my sister-in-law's mother. Her daughter, Linda, married my brother Bob, so Linda McKenzie Ulwick is my sister-in-law. They live in Situate. But I had pulled together some information. I had hoped to have Louise here today. I thought I could bribe her with Dairy Queen gift certificates. For her, that's like a Klondike bar, you know? What will she do for a gift certificate? But I got a resounding no. Kevin also tried at a senior luncheon recently and got a resounding no. And you know, when you're 98 years old, you get away with that, you know? So anyway. But Louise and Danny McKenzie and their 3 girls moved from Dorchester. They were at 37 Sargent Street to Bank Street in Abington in 1964. It was the one and only house that they had ever owned, and Louise still lives there to this day on her own. Louise didn't drive. You didn't need to at first, and initially took the bus to Rockland to work at sales and grants, and later at Kmart, retiring at age 70. After Danny passed away in 1976, the family helped Louise to finally get her driver's license and a car of her own. Independence. Louise has been known as a talented seamstress, making clothes for herself and her 3 daughters and later her grandchildren. Her middle daughter, Linda, was voted best dressed in her Abington High School yearbook in 1970, wearing outfits stitched by her mother. Not many people knew that, by the way. It was kind of fun to know that in the background. Their 3 daughters entered the Abington school system, all graduated from Abington High. Diane McKenzie Chauncey went on to teach at Center, North, and Woodsdale schools before relocating to New Hampshire to run a farm. She's currently town clerk in Antrim, New Hampshire. She has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. And in fact, her daughter, whose name is Mackenzie, was just visiting Louise yesterday. She came out from New York, so I got to see Mackenzie. Hadn't seen her in years. Linda McKenzie Ulwick married Bob Ulwick from Wyman Road, her childhood sweetheart, her high school sweetheart, and became a secretary and later a co-owner of a business. She and Bob live in Situate and have had 2 children and 4 grandchildren. The youngest daughter, Carol Mackenzie Maines, was a high school classmate of mine, actually, in Maryland's. She went on to a career in nursing and lived in Abington with her husband, Bob, until her passing in 2020 from multiple myeloma. They had 2 children and 3 grandchildren, and actually one of those children has passed. Louise's mother lived till age 99 and her aunt to age 101, so longevity is in the genes. So we wish her well. She will turn 99 in mid to late November. She told me the date, but I'm really bad at dates, which is an embarrassing thing to say for a historian. But nonetheless, I freely admit it. And there was a wonderful ceremony, which I gather you were certainly responsible for, at a senior luncheon when she was presented the cane, and the family made up bookmarks. And we're seeing the front and back side of the bookmarks. She's an avid reader and very active in the Abington Public Library. And there are spare copies of these bookmarks on the table near the entry. Feel free to take one. We did them in her honor, and also it was a way of educating the public and the seniors about the cane. You know, who knows who will end up with it next, but hopefully not for a little while at least. And this is a picture from the ceremony that day with some town officials and Louise in the middle, and she's flanked by Linda and Diane. Diane has the cane next to her. So she's an amazing lady, still lives on her own, has some difficulty getting around, and her eyesight's failing, so she's not sewing as much as she used to, but she's still getting along and living a meaningful life, and loves going to the senior center, by the way. It's one of her big outings. So, and
And they have great food.
great food. I was chatting actually with the deputy chief here in town, and he just loves her to death and whatever. But at this ceremony, the family gathered. I mean, all of her grandchildren who could be there were there. I mean, she has a granddaughter in California who didn't make the trip, but one of her grandsons, my nephew, is police chief in Ashland, New Hampshire, and his wife is a former special ed teacher in Manchester. She's now an assistant principal somewhere, and their children are in high school and college. And anyway, so it was a good turnout by the family, and everyone was great. The town welcomed the family, which was kind of good. Then acting chief Dave Majensky said, I understand one of her grandsons is a police chief. And I said, yes. And he said, point him up to me. And it was easy. Will was wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I said, him. So David had an Abington police mug for him, which was just a nice gesture. So I was thrilled. And at this luncheon, all of Abington's finest and best were serving the seniors. So if you don't know about the seniors luncheon, they're quite a social event. And the food is good, you're telling me?
Very good.
I only had a hot dog, so I mean, okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Anyway, but moving back to the cane, I think you're probably aware of this. There is a Boston Post Cane Information Center online. This site was not particularly up to date, reading some of the entries in it, but out of the 700, they're claiming they have been in touch with 546. They're listing the states. They weren't all Massachusetts: Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. None in Vermont. I guess they sell papers there. And none in Connecticut. So it was an interesting, not cross-section, interesting selection. But I looked at, and I know Kevin was kind enough to check into our other member towns, Rockland and Whitman, and you learned...
Yeah, Rockland, I can go back to when I was in Rockland. I don't recall that we had any, and from what I've been finding out, no, they don't. They don't have their original cane, and they don't participate.
They don't know where it is.
Exactly. Whitman, however, does. Whitman, and they have the Historical Commission decides, it's really who is the oldest. And the Historical Commission recommends to the, I believe, the Board of Selectmen to turn it out. I could be wrong on that,
But they've taken over that
they've
aspect
taken over
of,
the
of
aspect
it, so
yeah.
they're seeing
So it's still active.
day to day. Actually, according to the site, in 2003, Whitman offered a $250 reward if someone could turn up their cane. And
Rockland.
Rockland, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It was Rockland who did that. And apparently it didn't work. So this is actually one of the ingenious things about awarding a replica. We know where the original is.
Yeah.
and no antique dealer is going to get their hands on it. It's locked up at Town Hall. But yet there's still something, a facsimile, to present to the elder citizen, male or female. But yes,
Were some of the original cane heads gold?
they were all gold.
They were, yes.
It was ebony.
Real thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
real gold and real ebony, 700.
And what happened a lot of times is that the families were supposed to give them back, and they didn't, and they kept them. And hence the reason that they got lost.
Yeah. So, but I'm impressed they found 546. But, this was also something going on pre-internet where you couldn't get the word out, where you couldn't make the awareness that this is happening. So suddenly now we have a whole room full of people who are more aware of this than ever and can check with your hometowns if it doesn't happen to be Abington, Rockland, Whitman, and say, hey, do we want those canes? And see where that takes you, because it's kind of interesting. It's a wonderful tradition. I just have often wondered if there's a curse that goes along with it.
I hope not.
Giving it to an elderly person and saying, you want it back when?
Well, and the other thing is, as I presented it to Louise, I said, this is the worst thing an elected official can do. Give a cane to a woman and tell her she's old.
Especially a woman.
Yeah. So from that, if I could, just one quick thing. If
Yeah,
I could just go
please.
back because of the dyer, and it's got nothing to do with the cane.
That's all right.
But when I mentioned about Martha Campbell, and we had the Pilgrim records at the county, after Martha was done, we were able to loan them on a permanent basis to the Pilgrim Museum, because it made no sense to me to allow all those records to be kept in the vault at the county office. And Jeff is here. Jeff is a former county commissioner and resident of Abington, and
He's a fairly
assistant
new
treasurer.
member of Historical Society. I finally roped him in, but
And with that said, I felt as though it was more important for the public to see it, and so there's no sense in, so it's now on permanent loan to the Pilgrim Museum. So, and you can go down there and see the actual Pilgrim records. And I used to go down, our meetings were at 1 o'clock, and I would go down there at 10 o'clock in the morning just to go through the records.
And
you know,
learn.
of seeing what it was like
Learn.
before, just,
Yeah.
it was just amazing.
there are some,
A little of an update on that, if I may.
Oh.
So through Bill Galvin's office, the Secretary of State, Register of Deeds John Buckley received a grant to fit out a portion of the Registry of Deeds building with a climate-controlled room
Oh,
to
good.
bring those back into the possession of
Oh,
county.
wonderful, good.
You can make an appointment and visit Mr. Buckley at any time. He's more than happy to show you around his registry and to show you these records from 400 years ago that are in a really good, just again, climate control, archival quality. Again, thanks to, you know, when you pay the tech fund when you record a deed, there's a $5 surcharge. That's where some of the money came from to.
do the preservation.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Did I
good to know.
understand from Martha once upon a time that many of the earliest documents were like between sheets of silk or something, that you could
Yeah.
read through them, but you couldn't touch them? Yeah, and I know early copies I got of stuff was in reverse image and whatever.
Yeah, and one time in the 1800s, the state did pay to bind them and put them onto 1800s quality paper.
Mhm.
So the books that you're looking at physically, the binding is only 200 years old, so relatively new. But the actual pages that are fitted within the binding are, again, 400 years old, you know, Governor Bradford's pen and paper.
So there's some amazing collections. This is opening the door to mention a few things that involve the Dyer as well, and the town of Abington as well. Documents that are preserved in various places. Here at the Dyer, we have one of the more complete sets of the Liberator newspaper by William Lloyd Garrison. And the Historical Society a few years ago paid to get acid-free paper and boxes and everything to preserve them. And actually, the project was undertaken by Paul K. Smith's widow. And she did the project for us and dedicated herself to do it. And it's in not even a locked room, but it's in a separate room that's kind of hard to find in this building. But to find them intact and to find them still on paper is amazing. You can find stuff online. We also have the Cyrus Nash papers here. Those are locked away in a vault. The topic came up yesterday. Eileen and I did a guided tour through Island Grove Park, and we were talking about the oldest house and the oldest remaining house. And Cyrus was a builder, and he was working on a roof at the brick front house, Smith family house, we might know it more recently as, on Washington Street, and fell off and broke his back and was paralyzed. And he became a tinkerer after that, but he also became an avid note taker about Abington history. And the notes were on anything. They were in journals, they were written on the back of wallpaper, they were anything. And I mean, it might be something, oh, I heard the church bells ring today, so-and-so must have died. It was day to day to day history in Abington during his lifetime. An invaluable record. Again, personal memories, stuff we just don't get in the history books. We have that collection. I think we even have it transcribed, but that is here in this building. For a while, we had Sam Brown's journal. It was on loan to us by the Congregational Church, by United Church of Christ, for a long time. Sam Brown was the first minister in town. His journal wasn't simply so-and-so died, so-and-so got married, so-and-so whatever. It was really about life in Abington. And I mean, I know Christy Coburn had done some sermons based upon it. I mean, the day he wrote, well, I buried my daughter today. Like, oh, okay. I mean, we're talking about a child, you know, who died early on and just didn't make it. But children didn't necessarily live that long back then. But in that simple phrase, what was he telling us? You know? And I always enjoyed the fact that by page 3, he was admonishing a couple for having sex out of wedlock. So it really, he kind of covered it all, let it all hang out. It was here for a while, it was on loan. The insurance people got a little nervous about that and said either you have to own it or give it back. And at the time they gave it back to UCC, who kind of lost track on it. And when I was music director up there for a while, I found it sitting on my desk and said, okay. But it stayed there under lock and key. They understood what they had. The Congregational Library in Boston became aware of it, long story, but they did and asked if they could have it, if they could borrow it, if they could scan it. And at the time, the ruling was, you can borrow it and scan it, and we want it back. And that's exactly what happened. And you can actually read online Sam Brown's journal through the Congregational Library website. Ultimately, the late congregation member and historian Bob Valancourt said, you know what? Congregational Library really needs to have this document. They're in a better position to hold it, to own it, to secure it than we are. So the church finally voted, and the original is now in the Congregational Library in Boston. But there's all these collections of this stuff out there. And in this neck of the woods, we have the old stuff. Sam Brown became minister in this town in 1711. So, I mean...
Well, and the fire department stuff downstairs, that we're building a new fire headquarters in Abington, and my hope is we can chat about that.
We're talking about it.
Yeah, because Judge Kelly from Rockland had given to, when he died, I think Morris Lullabelle, one of the
Probably. Morris lived in Abington.
Yeah,
So,
who donated it here, and there's, again, on that same premise that I was just talking about, the Pilgrim, you know, so, but there's a lot of very nice old fire memorabilia.
Yeah.
And I had just written a book on the history of the Abington Fire Department, about a 180-page book that I only had 50 copies made, and I think I've got 2 left now. But
And there's not a copy here?
well, that's why as I'm sitting here thinking,
I caught him.
geez, I should give you one. So.
Well, one for Dyer and one for...
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll get there, by all means. Anyway, any questions? This has been a wide-ranging topic. Eileen?
I was just wondering if there were any plans to take Martha Campbell's transcriptions and digitize them so that they are available.
Well, it's HSOA property. If we want to do it, we can.
No, the stuff that's at the
Plymouth.
Oh, I'm sorry,
County-
Plymouth.
county.
Yeah.
Good question. I've got to go through my. The short answer is I'm sure that I can't speak for them, but I'm sure they'd be happy to.
Some of the, but I don't know if it's directly Martha Campbell's translations, but there are translated versions of those early records that are on the registry website, and look at them and view them for
Yeah,
free.
and
Actually, I think we should probably invite Mr. Buckley to a subsequent conversation.
I
Down there and talk
I
about
think
it.
you're right.
And I actually, let me go through my stuff. I think I may have a copy.
there's a website that volunteers from across the country get on
Mhm.
this type of way.
Oh, okay.
They're doing the Abington GAR book right now.
Oh,
So it
okay.
will be available to anyone.
All right, let me
Yeah.
check through my stuff and see
Cool.
if I have it.
Resources. We love
Yeah,
resources.
yeah.
And more online resources.
Back
Um,
on Boston Post Kane for a minute. So,
Sure.
is it pretty easy to find out who's the oldest person? Is there like some kind
Yes.
of program and it just tells you this
Yeah,
is
the town clerk has a
Town
printer.
clerk,
Okay.
yeah.
She just pushes a button and
Okay, so
boom.
then what happens if after you have given the award, somebody moves into town who's older than that person? How does that work?
That was the big debate in Kingston. And that was how I became aware of it. Because Silver Lake Commons was, the assisted living, nursing home.
Suddenly you had an influx.
Suddenly you had an influx. And the people that lived in town were saying, wait a minute, we've lived here all our life, how come? And at the time, the selectmen ruled, look, they're a resident of Kingston, it didn't matter. And I think, to be fair, it's an age-old debate, but if they're a resident of the town, I think you have to go with just that. They're a resident of the town, regardless.
No matter when they got there.
Yeah.
But do you take it away from someone or no?
No.
No, and once they get it, they
Once
get
they
it.
get it, they get it,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
So you must also have to keep track of deaths.
You do. Yeah, and I think that's half the reason that, in fairness to the selectmen, if they're not history buffs, they're not interested. And they're not, and if they don't know the people, they're not interested in keeping up on it. I happen to like
Yeah.
that, so I know, you
it
know,
almost seems worth, shall we say, deputizing the town
yes.
clerk.
Yeah.
Actually, because again, they're the record keepers.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and they would be the ones to know all that, so they could advise.
Yeah,
But-
and that's something before I leave yet again. I will.
Is that a threat or a promise?
At this stage. But that's something I want to memorialize,
Yeah.
you know, for the future too.
Yeah, I think to keep it going, but now we're all aware of it too, so I think that also helps in public awareness, so. Any other questions? These are good questions.
When was the Boston books last published? What year?
1950s, was it?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think the last,
Maybe the 50s.
the one you had up there.
That was the 1919
Oh, was it? Okay.
Boston molasses flood, so
Yeah,
that wasn't
Yeah.
it.
I don't know.
because I do remember.
Yeah.
I want to say it was the 1950s. There is a date out there, but it didn't make it to anywhere near present day, you know.
I was wondering.
Because I mean, it was 50s is, you know, my early life, and I'm old. So. I know we won't go there. Anyway, okay. This is wonderful. Thank you, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for doing this, first of all.
Oh, no
You've already brought it back twice now. Let's see if we can keep it going from there. So, and I thank you all for your participation today and for listening to our upcoming essay entry issues and solving them for us and voting in support of the committee. That was wonderful. We will see you the first Sunday in November, and we'll talk to Stephen O'Neill at that point. If you haven't met Stephen yet, feel free to stop in during dire hours. They're now open 3 days a week, and you can meet him in person, but you'll have the opportunity to meet him and ask him questions and everything a month from now. So I'm really looking forward to it. We have a mutual interest in the future, so it's a good thing, and I think the trustees chose very wisely. The other exercise we kind of started already. Again, members, please raise your hand. Look around you and see who's not raising their hand, and make sure you say hi to them. And also invite them, as I invite you, to refreshments in the back room right now. There's a pretty good layout of food, and please help us eat it and continue on these conversations. We'd greatly appreciate it. Happy to see you, and see you next time. Thank you.
Good, thank you.